Welcome back to part 2 of the 10 reasons why sea sanctuaries could fail. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, I go over the human-based and managemental decisions relating to them, so I recommend watching that first. But in this video, I'll be exploring the next 5 reasons why sea pens are a problem and how they impact animal welfare and behaviour directly. So if that sounds good to you, let's get to it. Hello and welcome to this episode of Emma's Deep Dives, the channel where I, with your help, change the narrative on what we understand about animal welfare and the impact that it has on our thoughts, feelings and decisions we make every day. If that sounds like something you're interested in being a part of, then click that subscribe button and help form part of this platform and community. For those of you who are new, my name is Emma and I have specialised in animal welfare science, conducted research on bottlenose dolphins and have direct industry experience across marine mammal facilities. Number 1, or number 6, animal behaviour. So let's start off with the first behaviour-based issue. One of the concerns known within captive facilities that already use seawater environments is that pollution and environmental debris is something that's really hard to avoid. Marine mammals notoriously are curious and they will eat many things without discrimination. Objects such as plastic bags, leaves, cigarette butts, rocks, other random items that you might find, even bottle caps and even batteries. If these objects find their way into the animals' enclosures, the animals will try to eat them. In more controlled environments, the trainers can train the animals to not ingest objects that they pick up. Or more importantly, they'll have some degree of control over the cleaning and the maintenance of the water. At the very least, if a foreign object falls into the water, the trainers can recall the animals and keep them stationed and busy whilst someone else dives and fetches it. But the whole point of having these animals in sea pens is to not be training them in the same way as they would be trained in traditional facilities, and to let them be in as natural environment as possible. Unfortunately, when you consider how polluted and full of plastic the ocean is in reality, there's no way around the animals' problem of eating things that they shouldn't be. So leaves in plastic bags it is for lunch then, which is just delicious. And maybe the vet might come round to pull out 4 kilograms of garbage from the animal's stomach after several months of this being left unchecked. Good luck trying to do that to a killer whale. Reason number 2. Welfare compromises for captive bred animals. The underlying principle that sea pen advocates believe is that all captive marine mammals would be better off in a sea pen with minimal interaction with the trainers, and that the natural setting above all else is the most important thing. For example, where catching their own fish is the best form of enrichment because that's what wild whales do. And it stimulates millions of years of evolutionary behaviour or instinct. Let me tell you this. Animals in the wild have no choice. They have to survive. They have to coordinate hunting to make sure that they all eat, especially ensuring there's enough food for the younger, less experienced animals. The act of hunting is a learned cooperative behaviour, and if they aren't taught how to do it, they won't learn and then they'll starve. They also have to swim long distances in the ocean to find enough food, avoid predators, and sometimes avoid each other. Animals bred in captivity don't experience this level of demand for survival. In high-quality facilities, they're fed exactly what they need, and they're trained to be stimulated cognitively and physically, and their group social structures are managed effectively to ensure calm social cohesion as much as possible. If these animals were placed in the sea pen without that same level of human-based interaction with their trainers, regardless of what that might look like to non-marine mammal folks, these animals are likely to get bored, no matter how much more natural space they're allocated and how many more birds that they can chase. And that risks leading them to more aggressive social interactions if they're all penned in together. If the animals are not experiencing frequent bouts of training, and the trainers are only being rolled out to feed them, that will completely compromise the animals' expectations and positive relationships with their trainers, as they'll be merely reduced to human food buckets. Now, the breakdown of a trusting animal-trainer relationship may also really jeopardise the safety and the animal's willingness to perform voluntary husbandry procedures in the future, which will negatively impact veterinary care. See where I'm going with this? So, animal-based reason 3, disease. Now, disease might come about by infection from rake marks, pathogens, fatal morbillivirus, and recently coronavirus. For example, raking is a natural way of communicating between marine mammals. They don't have hands, so a lot more of their physical interactions and explorations are done with their mouths. Raking is when an animal will literally rake and scrape its teeth along the body of another. In dolphins, these marks can look pretty bad, but they're most often superficial and can disappear in a few days. In cases where aggression is really bad, these rake marks can cut much deeper, and if they're not treated effectively, they can lead to serious infection and tissue necrosis. Animals bred in captive facilities are in a much more sterile environment compared to wild animals, so their immunity to foreign pathogens is much lower. They don't encounter animals from the wild, so exposing them to an open water environment could be really disastrous for both parties. It's the same reason why you don't mix herds or flocks of farm animals, in case one brings in disease and infects and spreads it amongst the other animals on the other farm. Now, the same issues apply here, and imagine going to all of that effort and financial expense just to see the housed animals catch diseases that the vets are unable to treat, and they all die within a year or two. And they inadvertently spread the disease amongst the wild population. And if you haven't already seen enough of what happens when infectious disease is left to spread uncontrollably, then I'm not sure what I can suggest to help you to understand. Also, speaking of coronavirus, there's at least one strain that's actively affecting wild populations of marine mammals now. So, that's a thing. This is a tricky one. No matter how big the pen might be, it might still lead to complications when it comes to breeding and aggression. The animals that have formerly or currently been housed in sea pens have only ever been of one sex. Kiko, a male orca, little grey and little white, 2 female belugas. Now, if you want to relocate several animals to a sea pen, then you have a number of trade-offs and compromises to consider. Sea sanctuaries do not want the animals to breed because caring for mothers and babies is really expensive. It's also not always successful, and they definitely wouldn't want the PR nightmare of having a dead baby whale in their sea pen. So, what are the options? 1. You only keep animals of one sex, so only males or only females, which obviously limits the animals that they can put in the facility, and it's also not a natural representation of marine mammal social structures in the long run. 2. You could keep both sexes, but keep them segregated. Unfortunately, aggression can be highly likely in the cases of single-sexed groups of orca, which naturally live in mixed-sex societies. And bottlenose dolphins can get really unruly if they can't, which presents welfare issues of its own. 3. Put the animals on birth control, which is incredibly difficult to regulate in marine mammals, as the medication that's currently available to use is technically intended for much smaller species. Reason number 5. There's no science to support the need for sea pens. This is perhaps one of the most understatedly important ones, but there is no scientific indication that these animals need to be in a sea pen at all. A scientific assessment demonstrated that life expectancy and survival rates for bottlenose dolphins in human care consistently match and exceed those of wild dolphins. In addition, their normal social interactions don't differ between these populations either, which demonstrates that zoos can ensure these animals are still able to express natural and normal social behaviours. Bonus reason, which is activist rhetoric and bad blood.
The goal of having him be independent.
Foster worried this new strategy would jeopardize Keiko's health.
I wish it was as easy as having him jump over breakwater and swimming off. They wanted him released at all costs, and the cause got in the way of doing the right thing.
Keiko was not the best candidate for a rehabilitation or release project, but he was the only candidate.
The hypocrisy within these circles is so rife and unchecked that it's essentially led to a deep schism within the marine mammal community. What angers me is that proponents of sea pens bash and bash and bash captivity, but what they're proposing it's still captivity, just with a bigger net and significantly less structure and stability compared to a zoological facility.
For a decade, they were made to perform for our pleasure. Now, they get to swim free.
The best solution is to build natural seaside sanctuaries where captive whales and dolphins can live in an environment as close to their natural habitat as we can provide.
Little grey and little white are free at last.
As I mentioned in my previous videos, if they solely rely on donations, that doesn't guarantee income. So how else are they going to make enough money to keep these animals alive and preferably thriving? The way I see it with these activist projects is that the goodwill is there, which is very noble, but good intentions don't always translate into successful results, and they aren't enough to guarantee the safety and the good life experience that a dedicated facility can provide to these animals after decades of refining their practice. And that includes knowing how to make money in an effective way. I actually feel there would be a lot more support for sea pens if the creators were willing to concede that it's still a captive environment. But they make such a racket over how it's not the same as a captive environment, and so incorrectly use the terms such as rescue, release to the ocean, and open ocean home to make it sound like they're doing something that they're not, which is just manipulative and misleading to everyone. The more annoying thing is that because the proponents have wreaked such havoc within the credible scientific community and with zoo managers, there's no trust between either side to actually want to make this work by utilising all the expertise that could maximise the potential success of sea pens. This is a real shame in my opinion, and I know I've spent the last however many minutes bashing or trashing the concept of sea pens, but that's in the case of activists wanting to rescue the animals from SeaWorld, where this is such a dumb agenda that they push because SeaWorld isn't where the problems are for welfare. So there you have it. After all that, a breakdown of the 10 reasons why sea sanctuaries could fail from a management perspective and from an animal welfare one. If you enjoyed and were surprised by any of the information in this video, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, links to resources are listed in the description below. If you have any questions about any of this that I've covered, please ask below, as I want you to feel as informed as possible. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and I'll see you on the next Emma's Deep Dives.